لا تخلف الميعاد. Translation: Our Lord, we have heard a crier calling us onto faith, saying, "Believe ye in your Lord," and we have believed. Our Lord, forgive us therefore our sins, and remit from us our evils, and in death join us with the righteous. Our Lord, give us what thou hast promised to us through thy messengers, and disgrace us not on the day of resurrection. Surely thou breakest not thy promise. Jazakallah.
Rahim bhai. Before we get started, I think it's appropriate to take a minute or two to discuss why we're here and what the concept is behind it, and what the concept behind this program is. But first, I'll say Jazakallah to everyone for joining us tonight on your Friday night, and a special thanks to Omar Shaheed Sahib, Rafiq Ahmad Sahib, and Yusuf Sahib for taking the time out to share their precious memories and their journey throughout their time in Ahmadiyyat, and then for some of them who are converts, their journey to Ahmadiyyat. So Jazakallah to you all for taking the time out to do that. The purpose of this new series of webinars is in the name itself. It's to reflect upon our history. Today we are blessed to be joined by pioneering members of our community here in the US. And as Khuddam, we are immensely blessed to be members of this community, the servants of Islam and Ahmadiyyat in reality. But while it's important to work hard for the propagation and protection of Islam and Ahmadiyyat in this age, it remains integral for us to remember those brothers, some of whom joined this blessed community upon their own conviction and their selfless service that has brought upon the prosperity that we enjoy today. So today we'll hear the story of Yusuf Saab's, his journey to Ahmadiyyat. We'll hear the story of Rafiq Saab's journey to Ahmadiyyat. And I'm especially looking forward to Omar Saab. Omar Saab is, he's been a member of Jamaat Ahmadiyya USA for 73 years. And, the wealth of knowledge and the experiences that he is going to share with us, there are things that, we are so extremely blessed to have the opportunity to hear. But before we go on to that, I think that an important point to make in this context is that, I was thinking about this program and thinking about what I should say about it ahead of time. And I remembered the words that Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyad al-Talib Nasir Aziz, wrote to Jamaat in his letter. Hazur writes that we need to reestablish that fervor and zeal for tabligh and service as taken on by Mufti Muhammad Sadiq Sahib and his companions. And so now I think that with MK Reflects as a program, it's an ample time for us to reflect upon this instruction from our beloved Hazur. So now we should reflect upon the sacrifice that these pioneering members of the community made for us. Move forward with that same zeal that they had. With that, I'll just make one humble request in the end, that all those attending the program should particularly remember those pioneering members of the community who gave their hours and their time for the service and the propagation of Islam and Ahmadiyyat, and especially remember their families. With that, without any further ado, I don't want to take up too much time. I'll hand it over to Yusuf Saab. Before I hand it over to Yusuf Saab, I'll just say a quick couple words of introduction for Yusuf Saab, and then I'll let him handle the program from there. Yusuf Saab, who will be our moderator today, is 36 years old, and he converted to Ahmadiyyat in 2009 after reading the philosophy of the teachings of Islam and at that time he was residing in Houston, Texas. And now Yusuf Saab is joining us from MKA, Canada. I see Toronto, Canada here, and I think, alhamdulillah, we're blessed that we have some other additional members of Majlis Khuddam Ahmadiyya Canada also joining in the audience. So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Yusuf Saab. Towards the end of the program, we'll have some time, inshallah, for question and answer sessions. And at that time, I'll go over the instructions on how to ask questions and anything of that nature as well. Before I formally hand it over to Yusuf Saab, I'll just make the request to everyone to please keep your videos off if you can. Once the question and answer sessions begin, we'll allow you to turn on your video so you can see the panelists interact with them. But for now, just try to keep your videos off. Without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Yusuf Saab to get started.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wow, I see a lot of guys on here that I know from basketball camps and stuff. So salam, it's good to see you guys. Especially guys, you're happy here for this event. So I've been looking at the bios of these guys, and I've I have a lot of questions. I'm really excited to get started. Assalamu alaikum. Do we have Brother Omar and Brother Rafiq on here right now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Your
sir.
mics?
Well, like who?
Guys, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Mashallah. Okay, so I'm just gonna dive right in. I gotta start with Brother Omar just because, wow, your mom accepted Ahmadiyyat in 1936? That's amazing.
Yes, sir.
Could you, just from the start, did she ever tell you a story about meeting Khalifa Sani? I'd really be interested to hear that.
Well, from what Mom told me, I'll start with my father. My father, his mother and father, my grandparents came in 1932. And in 1936, my mom came in. And with regards to Khalifa Masih Sani, Mom was the 5th Lajna president at that time. And we've had, what starts with the missionaries. I'll start with the missionaries, then I'll come forward. First missionary was Dr. Yusuf Khan, and he actually was a businessman, and he came in 1 year after Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, peace be upon him. And he and Mufti Muhammad Sadiq were very close. And after Dr. Khan came in 1923, he came into New York on a boat, went to Chicago. He and Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, may Allah rest his soul, got together. Mufti Muhammad Sadiq wrote back to Hazrat Muslim Maud and asked if he, Dr. Khan, could be a missionary. And so once that was approved, Dr. Khan left Chicago and he came to Pittsburgh. So he came to Pittsburgh in 1930, and he was in Pittsburgh from 1930 to 1935. And afterwards, Mirza Manawa Ahmed was the next missionary. He came in 1946. And he was a relative of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him. And he, actually, I was born in 1946 in December, and he called the azan in my ear, my right ear. And, but there was a close relationship. In fact, back at that time, Lejna was doing most of the work. They were doing a lot of the work. Plus you had a lot of depression. We were in a depression from the 30s and the 40s. So Lejna were basically doing a lot of the tabligh, the administrative work and so forth. And so with regards to my mom meeting Hazrat Muslim Maud, that came about through the starting of Lejna. And at that time, Mom was the president of Lejna, and we were the first Lejna to even send a report to Hazrat Muslim Maud, Raziallahu anhu. So
the auxiliary starting his time.
Yeah, so
wow.
That basically was it. But Lejna actually started in 1946. And so the first report came from Pittsburgh to Rabwa. And so that's
in 46?
1946. And so with regards to Mom was with regards to the president here in Pittsburgh, she was the 5th president here in Pittsburgh, Lejna Center. And I think from 1963 to 1966, she became National Lejna Center. And she also served as National Finance Secretary for National Lejna. And
so your mother was introduced to Jamaat through Dr. Khan then? Or through your,
yes.
Through your father?
Yes, it's through Dr. Khan. And, well, actually, no. Let me say it again. I want to make a correction on that. She actually came in through Mufti Muhammad Sadiq.
Oh, wow.
I got correct number, Sufi Amar Bengali. I'm sorry. I had to get these names straight. But she was a Christian, went to Payne Chapel Church, and it was a speech that she heard Sufi Amar Bengali give on Jesus didn't die on the cross. And after that speech, she accepted Islam through Ahmadiyya.
Wow.
Back in 1936. That's what brought her in, was Sufi Amar Bengali. And also at that time, Mufti Muhammad Sadiq had gone back. And also Dr. Khan had also went back in 35. So
Back
after,
to India?
Yes, went back to India. So, I'm sorry for getting these dates wrong and getting mixed up.
No. This is very impressive. You've
Sufi
memorized
Amar
the really well.
Bengali came in after Mufti Muhammad Sadiq went back, and there was a lot of work that he did. And also back at that time, we were receiving I think it was the Muslim Sunrise that was being printed in Lahore. We were getting that on I think it was a bi-weekly basis. It was coming into the US. So I can...
So you were born in 46. I was guessing 47, but I guess you were born at the end of 46.
December,
so
yes.
Did you meet the third, fourth, and fifth Khalifa?
Yes, I have. I met the fifth Masih Silas. May Allah be pleased with him. He came into Washington. They had a meeting with him at a hotel, and I took my son, Nasir. In fact, I named him after the third Khalifa, Nasir Ahmed. And so he was only 2 years old at the time, but we flew out on a plane. We met Clifton Masih Silas. I think we had a reception for him. It was a hotel. They had a reception. So I had it was more of an introduction. It wasn't really a mulaqab with him, but I had a chance to meet him personally, shake his hand, pray behind him, and so forth. And
what year was this? You remember?
This was back in, I'm going to get this right now. I think it was 76. I think it was in the 70s. Yeah, it was in the 70s when he came in. And I also had a chance to he came into Dayton, Ohio. And I was responsible for getting his luggage off the plane. He flew in. And it was really interesting because Dr. Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar was in charge of security at that time. And so all of us who know Dr. Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar came in. In fact, he elevated spiritually so many different, from coming in as Dr. Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar, he became a spokesman for our fourth Khalifa, international spokesman. And so anyway, when we came in, Clifton Masih Silas came into Dayton, it was really interesting. Came in, went through they had a line set up for him to go through the airport. And the one thing I remember about Clifton Masih Silas, he was really interested in meeting the public. And so when we came out of the airport, got into the car, we went. So when we arrived at the beginning of Randolph Street, he wanted to get out of the car and he wanted to walk up to the mosque, because he wanted to shake hands with the membership. And so got out, walked up, and so the security had to make his adjustment. But he walked up. He was meeting non-Muslims and Muslims at the time. He walked up to the mosque, and it was just a grand occasion at that particular time. And
was there a lot of people that showed up for that event?
Well, yes. In fact, there was so many blessings that I could talk about at that time, and I want to mention them. The one blessing that I mentioned that I want to talk about, the community leadership of Dr. Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar. And I know if, Haji Minallah, he can back me up on this. We had it was a Jalsa in Dayton, Ohio. And the respect for Islam to Ahmadiyya was so deep at that time that the Christian, non-Muslim people who lived on both Randolph and Denison, they opened up their homes to the Ahmadis who came into Dayton, slept in their beds, gave up their beds. These were non-Muslims. They weren't Ahmadis. You know, at that time, we weren't sleeping in motels. They gave up their homes, their beds, cooked breakfast for us. You know, we went to the mosque, came back, sat on the porch, talked to them, and they weren't Muslim at the time. They were just, had that great respect for Dr. Muzaffar al-Muzaffar and the Ahmadis who lived in Dayton at that time. And that's what they did. And that never happened. Again, we never witnessed people giving up their homes, especially non-Muslims, to allow Ahmadis to stay in their homes, giving up their personal beds and providing us with food that they cooked for free. And back at that time, we were hauling cots back and forth. The cots were in Pittsburgh, trailer hooked up to the car. We were pulling cots from the different jalsas that we went to back at that time. So we were sleeping on cots on the floor. Brothers were coming in, they were sleeping inside trailers, they were sleeping in vans. That was the kind of brotherhood that existed back at that time. Great leadership among Qudam. One brother I want to mention, and I have to mention him, is Brother Yahya Sharif. Brother Yahya Sharif was probably, he was a great Qudam Qaid, and I want to mention him. Military man, Jewish. The level of unity, the level of Tabiat was high in Qudam back at that time when he was the leadership. He left, you know, he had a situation where he left Islam through Ahmadiyya, health, passed away, and next we had from Philadelphia, and I'm trying to think of his name, and that's because I'm thinking so much. Munir Hamid was the next Qudam Qaid. And so Qudam has had some serious, great leadership, unified, dedicated, and nationwide. And the different universities that we had, Wilberforce University, in different places in Dayton, the different colleges, we were going to different universities at that time for our Jalsas. And I'll slow down right now. Go ahead.
It's you know, it's so interesting, and I want to revisit this point you brought up, that a lot of non-Muslims were helping, and I just from an outsider's point of view, I'd like to have like a little bit of more background on like what America was like for, you know, pre-Islamophobia. But we haven't had Brother Rafiq join in. Brother Rafiq, if you could just do a quick introduction of yourself as well, and we were hoping you could give us a story about Khalifa Rabi.
Okay, so my name is Rafiq Ahmad, friend from Philadelphia Jamaat. I've been a member of the Jamaat for just under 30 years. I signed by it in, I think it is 1991. And at the time, I was a Qudam. So, but before I say anything about my story, just let me say this. I think it's important that I am very humbled to have been considered for this program, because the importance of what I may have to say. It is also a great responsibility put on my shoulders to convey something that may inspire you to do what my dear beloved Uncle Munir Hamid here in Philadelphia taught us to be, which was action-oriented. So I'm hopeful that something I say tonight may inspire you to become that action-oriented member of our Jamaat. One thing that I kept in mind as I journeyed through Islam as my journey went through Islam and Ahmadiyya, was that there was this slogan, this phrase that was used that said, a nation cannot be reformed without the reformation of its youth. And that comes from one of our caliphs, I'm not sure which one, but I'm sure you know. We've heard this. And this is not a statement, it's a statement. It's something that's very true. As you look throughout the world, from the Tiananmen Square to the Arab Springs and all these different civil rights, and even what's happening right now today in America, all across America, you see these civil movements are headed up by young people for the most part. So the focus being tonight with Qadam, MKA, I want you to focus on the idea that this is, what we have to have is a spiritual revolution. The civil revolution is going on right now, but what America really needs, and the rest of the world, frankly, is a spiritual revolution. So that is the journey. That is what we should be focused on throughout this program this evening. So a little bit about my story and journey, and then maybe a little bit about the fourth Khalifa you want me to talk about, or did you say the fifth?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm okay with talking about either of them, like
Okay,
whatever your heart feels.
All right. So I started my journey through Islam back probably in the 70s, and I joined a group some you may be familiar with called the Nation of Islam. That was headed by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad at the time. And at that time, the attraction wasn't so much, I guess, Islam to some degree, because they said that there was some other God other than Jesus that was named Allah. There was no eating of the pork. I was a focus on diet and things of that nature. These were Black men that were standing up against the same things that we're facing today. And they were articulate, they had suits on, very impressive. They had their own organized effort. They had schools, they had restaurants, they had, places of business, and they were very, frankly, inspiring. They also gave us a great, they inspired us a sense of self. Even at the time, the way they did it was not something I don't agree with now as far as their views on different ethnicities and who was who. But that was the beginning of the journey. Throughout that journey, I never found real satisfaction. I actually jumped around. I studied a little Buddhism. I studied a little Christianity. I went back to Christianity. I studied a little Buddhism. I jumped around a little bit before I joined another group, which was the Ansar group, which was another primarily African-American group. But that group was, this is where I took my Shahada. And they were, this was the whole transformation as Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, when he transferred from, I took the similar kind of journey with this group, but they were primarily African-American based out of New York. So I joined that group, and then I learned, to do the fundamental things we do and accept the things fundamentally, the Shahada, Kalama, there's no God but Allah, and learning to pray, the Fatiha, and the Salat, and the tenets of Islam. So I did stay with that group for some time before I found Ahmadiyya. And I found Ahmadiyya through, one of the brothers in the neighborhood was related to Brother Munir Hamid, may Allah have mercy on him. And it was his way, and it was actually just the way he was living his life, my friend, that became attracted to me. And I asked him where was he going. He told me I'm going to the Ahmadiyya community. I said, great, I'm going to go up there and visit. He said, I'll send somebody to get you. I said, fine. I was a vendor at the time. And the individual who came to get me was none other than Brother Munir Hamid, may Allah have mercy on him. He picked me up and I asked him, who are you? He said, I'm the president. I said, what's the president? He said, the Imam. I said, wow, that was impressive. The president came to pick me up to take me to Juma. So that was the start. I got the same book, Philosophy and Teaching Islam. I read maybe 25 pages of it. I turned back and said, whoever wrote this is the truth. I've been sold on it ever since. So that was my journey into Islam and Ahmadiyya. And, as far as my experiences with the Khalifas, the fourth Khalifa, I had the pleasure of meeting him very first time up in Canada. It was the first mosque they ever built up there. And I remember saying, and this is the thing, this is what we got to keep in mind as we understand these Khalifas and who we really are. I remember clearly when I went up to Canada and this mosque was being built. I was brand new. I was super excited. He was going to be there. And we got there, it was nothing there but mud. It was frozen at the time, but it was no Peace Village. It was nothing. And I said, why did they put a mosque here? This is a true story. Why did they put a mosque here? So, after several years, you could literally see it from the highway. You could look and see it. So several years later, we heard that he was coming back, and we went to take a trip up there. And I remember telling my wife, saying, oh, it'll be easy to find. We can find it from the highway. And when we got there, it was incredible. The whole area this emerged, this whole town. You couldn't even see it anymore. You had to really know where you were going to find it. But I just said that to say that when the Khalifa makes a decision about something and catch it, that's it. You're supposed to believe in it and such. And that's what happened up there. So journeying forward, I met him again a few times here in the States. I was security for him in one place over in Willingboro Mosque when they built that. I had the good fortune of praying directly behind him. This is another real quick story up in Canada, because when they opened the doors for prayer for Friday Jummah, we were always frontline guys. So we ran in, and we were like a handful of people they let come in. So I didn't know at the time, but as someone moves from the prayer line, you move up. So I was in the front line. So the 4 or 5 people that stand right behind Hazor, this is the very first time, one of them moved. So I stepped up right behind those 4 or 5 guys. So they went to stop me. And he turned and shook his head no, and allowed me to stand there and pray behind him. It was quite the experience, as you know. Anyway, that was probably the highlight of being with him. But the 5th Khalifa, I've had the pleasure of being with him several times here in Philadelphia, where it all got started. He was right here, and we had a very nice meeting here in Philadelphia. But I had more time. I just don't want to take more time. Like let this thing go a little bit so we can get some other people talking. But that's kind of like what happened to me, and my relationships with the Khalifas are, I'm lockstep. I'm solid with that. I think that's the answer to it all. If we can just get lockstep with what he's saying, I think we'll be just fine. So I'll let you move on, Brother Yusuf, to the next one.
The first book I read was Philosophy and Teachings of Islam as well. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, this is just as Islam. And I agree with them, but I feel that a couple of the points that he's raised are much different from either imams or even Christian preachers, like bringing these points to religion. And so it's why it kind of stood out for me. Was there anything in the philosophy and teachings of Islam where like it just really kind of like it stood out, like a point that stood out, and you're like, wow, this is different. I never looked at it like that.
Nafsi lawama amara and mutamaina. That's what stood out. The self, how it was evolving. And I never heard anybody explain it from that perspective, that you were going through this transition and there was an actual name attached to it. And I read a lot. I've always read a lot, but I hadn't read anything like that. And the fact that this speech was read by somebody else, it wasn't even him that read the speech. And it was a timeline that was like, okay, a cutoff point. But the people became so enthralled with what was being said, they requested to hear the whole of that speech. So, that just resonated with me because, we have what they call these God kind of moments. And then if your spiritual eyes and ears are open, you'll kind of recognize that this is a tremendous thing, that a human being is defending Islam at the time, that it's getting battered, it's getting bashed. And he just, just goes up against these people and flawlessly just, overwhelms them with his knowledge, which, for me was very impressive. Now, I read just about 25 pages before I stopped. And when I stopped, I said, I had already made a decision. Whoever wrote this material has to be a person of truth, because there's no way you can make this up. It's like the Quran itself. There's no way you can make it up. And I felt like those writings, there's no way you can make it up. He had to have some kind of insight, some kind of vision, some kind of true dream, something that caused him to think that way. And I felt like that was good stuff.
Yeah, I found it refreshing too, and it actually, you know, because I wasn't introduced to Islam before Ahmadiyya, other than just Muslim friends. They never really were religious people.
Mm.
The I guess, like you said, the point about spiritual experiences, right? Like I've never heard anybody else like take such a bold statement, right? That you'll know I'm right because God still talks. You know, Christianity, it was always like, you're gonna find out that I'm right when you're burning in hell and you're dead. And I was just like, well, it's too much to gamble with my life.
Right.
But like the idea that like you could have like you said, you know, a spiritual experience or a spiritual revolution personally now, and that can be the thing that makes you decide if this is the truth or not. It's a bold statement. It's scientific, kind of. I mean, it is scientific.
Well, I would like to, let me add this. If you think about it, in 1920, there was a Khalifa. This is what we got to keep focusing on, the Khalifa and the connection from us to the Khalifa and what they're seeing, not what we see. In 1920, this our Khalifa he was just so like 30 years old. He was young, but he had the foresight, the insight to send a man across the ocean to a distant land. And there's no Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, none of this going on. But somehow he's inspired to send this man to come here to America, who landed right here in the city of brotherly love, sisterly affection. And he landed right here in 1920. I had the good fortune to go down there at the exact time that he landed. And with several members of our Jamaat here on the day that he landed, February 20th. So he comes to Philadelphia. He has a green turban on. He wants everybody to know I'm here. For what a purpose? But watch this. Before he comes on his journey, he converts several people on the ship. Now, I know what you were on the ship in 1920, what it must have felt like, but he stayed so focused that he was able to convert several people. Then he gets here, they put him right into detention, and what does he do? He stays so focused, he converts more before he journeys on out to the Midwest. But imagine that he was so focused on the task at hand that he was able to come here and establish something 100 years ago that you and I and every other Ahmadi are now enjoying freely, and say, okay, we got great responsibility now, because those early pioneers, as my dear brother Omar explained to us, in the hardships, in the willingness, in the brotherhood, all that's kind of fading now, because this detachment to the Khalifa, maybe we ain't really got it like we supposed to have it. So my thing is, stay as attached to the Khalifa as you can, not just as a, just a person you're going to hear talk, but a person that you actually want to do what he say do, because then you'll find an order to your life that you're really seeking. I don't care how much money you get. I don't care what status you get to. None of that's going to matter unless you got this attachment to this Khalifa, which you've been given as a birthright. Some of you, I'm a person that found it, by thank God that I did, and many of us have. So that's my stories about the Muhammad Mufti Sadi and his effort here. So we got to pick up the mantle and carry forward.
Brother Omar.
Yes, sir.
So we have a lot of born Ahmadis on this call, and you're also a born Ahmadi.
Right.
I've always believed personally there has to be a moment, even if you're born Ahmadi, where you're deciding, is this the truth or not? Right? Like, just because I'm born something doesn't mean that I'm necessarily that thing. It's just kind of decided for me by my ancestor. So did you have that moment yourself where you're like, I don't know if this is true or not, or like I need to make a proper investigation?
Well, one of the reasons why, I don't want to just say myself, you really don't get to that point in Ahmadiyya because you're surrounded by falsehood. And with regards to, Christianity and Jesus coming back after being gone 2,000 years and all this, it's not true. Many mistakes that, and how you're watching how people practice their religion, the eating of pork, when it's telling you in Leviticus chapter 11, verses 7 and 8, not to eat it. So you're seeing all this, and you're reading Holy Quran, and Quran is telling you what to do, not to do. You're under the total Allah's in total control of His creation, and even getting back to the promised Messiah, peace be upon, in his writings was under direct guidance from Almighty Allah. It wasn't something that he just thought up of by himself. He was guided. He was put in that position by Almighty Allah, because this community, this is the community that Allah wants established throughout the whole world. So what we're witnessing through, even in Caliphate, you know, Almighty Allah speaks to Huzur, or speaks to all the Caliphs, you know, and this is how they're guided. And we read this over and over again in the Holy Quran. One of the things that we were taught early is we were taught during the month of Ramadan, and even before I say that, we've actually been blessed by this pandemic, because I think we have a better understanding of how to deal with it and how to be patient and steadfast with all this around us. And then we've been blessed with homeopathic medication, you know, which I've taken and still taking. But getting back to what I think with regards to, and then we've had look at this from February on: Muslim Maud, Masi Maud, Ramazan, Caliphate Day. We understand what these days represent, even during this. And then we have Hazur speaking to us every Friday, you know, giving us the guidance and telling us what to do, what not to do. We're totally dependent on prayer, you know, and prayer is the key to everything that we do. And we're more so prepared to deal with anything that comes about in the way of trials, whether it's a pandemic or any other. I think any other community, religious community. We're also at a point now where we've seen some violence occurred this last 2 days in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. In being an Ahmadi, and especially being African American, we're at a point now where, when I was coming up in the 60s, it was always, say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. All right. Now we understand that just the word Black denotes difference. It denotes separation, you know. So at some point we have to cut that Black name loose, that Black title loose. We're Ahmadi African Americans. That's who we are. We're Ahmadis African Americans. So I know a lot of us are still into wanting to defend African Americans, use the word Black, use the word white, but these are titles that basically keep us separated from each other. So when we call ourselves Ahmadis, we're also reinforcing that motto, love for all, hatred for none, because we're dealing with everybody. And whether we're Palmer or what other ethnic group we are in Ahmadi Muslim community. But the word Black, that title, just, we have to cut it loose at some point. And this is really the time to do that. Even what happened to this George Flood, I think that's what his name was. But we've been going through this for years. There's violence, there's Black on Black crime, white on Black crime, white on white crime. Crime has been around us for years, all right? But with regards to being an Ahmadiyya, being a Muslim, there's never been a time when I even thought about giving up Islam or not believing in Caliphate. And it wasn't even something that my parents forced on me in their practice, and they were dedicated. But you don't get to that point, because here in America, we're surrounded by people who call themselves Christians that eat the pig. You go into a store, there's pig all over the place. But when you look into the Bible, as I mentioned in Leviticus chapter 11, verse 7 and 8, it's telling Christians not to eat the pig, but they have pig itis, you know? So when you watch the way Christianity is being practiced, we are blessed, beyond blessed, to be Muslim, and especially Ahmadiyya. You know, when you look at even other non-Ahmadiyya groups, all right, in their divisiveness, in their even telling us that we're not Muslim, you know, and in them trying to defend themselves and telling us that we're not Muslim, it's profanity, all right? It's nothing that they can disprove. So we're in a community that cannot be disproven. Islam cannot be disproven, and we're under the direct relationship and guidance from Almighty Allah. Now, there's nowhere else to go, you know, and that's a statement that I remember Dr. Muzaffar al-Muzaffar stating. There's nowhere else to go. We're here, you know, there's nowhere else to go. I didn't mean to take as much time. Go ahead.
No, no. You know, I noticed personally that Jamaat's been a great way for a lot of people that come from, you know, white American, Caucasian, right? People from European backgrounds and people with African backgrounds getting together. I mean, any culture, Islam is a great way to come together, but especially in America, where we're having such racially charged issues. I mean, a lot of times personally, and I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way, but as somebody that was born in America and grew up in America and whose ancestors have been in America for a long time, I find that culturally, I have more in common with African Americans. So when I see African Americans in Jamaat, you know, I kind of gravitate, I go over there because I know that culturally, we have a lot in common.
True.
Growing up in America. So we've been able to heal a lot, us two, as a group.
True.
What are your thoughts about how we can do this? Not just, you know, we talk about this in Jamaat, like how we can overcome cultural boundaries, but how do we do it as Americans?
Well, I mean, the Islam is the culture. That's the culture. It's not ethnic practices and so forth. Islam is the culture. And that's one thing Mom taught me. In fact, she even wrote a speech on that years ago. Islam is our culture. It's not, you know, different practices, different foods and so forth, you know, but when we look at what's happening here in America, a lot of it's intentionally programmed to keep us divided, okay? Give an example, some of the things I've witnessed. You have an election coming up, okay? We have guns being sold in the poor communities. We have drugs being poured into the poor communities, all right? Crime is being invented so that there's a way to justify doing things, all right? So, and it's the same thing, it's been going on for years. We've gone through a lot as African Americans, but at the same time, in being Muslim, you know, we can deal with that through our prayer, knowing that Allah is going to make the changes that are necessary for us to realize that Islam is the truth, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So it's the practice. So whatever the practice is, that's the truth beyond a shadow of a doubt, that's our culture. That's our culture. So, you know, I know music, to some degree, some people enjoy it, it's different than others. But with regards to being a Muslim, Islam is the culture of all humanity, not just us or Europeans and so forth. But I think the one thing that I am starting to realize now, that when we start using black, white, orange, and everything like that, those are just titles that keep us separated. And that's all they do, is keep us separated. They don't bring us together at all. You know, so as African American, you know, we should be using Ahmadi African American. I had a chance to go to London back in October. I was invited by our former president, Dr. Basir Rodney. And I went and I spent a whole weekend with the former Nigerian Emir and his family. And it was the first time in my life that I really realized that, you know, we're part of this diaspora, you know, of people. So I never thought about that before. I just grew up in America, went to school, worked, educated, went to Vietnam, you know, was blessed to be able to return, Bronze Star, all that, you know, all that was going over there. But I realized that even with Palmer being established over here, and a lot of our other Ahmadi members say, well, I don't understand what Palmer's about. You know, we're a global, all right, we're a global group. And our job is to, we're going to bring, inshallah, all African Americans and Europeans and everybody else into Ahmadiyya. All right, we just can't focus on African Americans because, you know, we have this dark skin color. Palm is about the unification of mankind. All right, I have, for some reason, more opportunity to do tabligh with Europeans than I do my own. And it's not by choice, it's just so happens. I have a gentleman right now, Andrew Clark, he's retired pastor, Lutheran, and he's been through philosophy teaching of Islam, he's been through Noah's Ark, and you know, before the pandemic started, he was here every Tuesday at the mosque. And he is at the point now where he is convinced that there's no other way. I mean, he's been practicing this Lutheranism, you know, and is a pastor, but he's realizing now that he can't even get enough to read the Promised Messiah's writings. Can't get enough of it. He just wants more books, and whenever he comes in on Tuesday, he's at Noah's Ark. He's got philosophy teaching of Islam, and he read them. You know, he's got the book by missionary Atullah Kaleem, Significance of Religious Preaching. I think that's the name of the book. Studying that, you know. So he's at a point in his life that, and it's up to him whether he wants to join our community or not. But he's calling us. You know, in fact, we're even talking to him on the phone every Tuesday. You know, about Islam to Ahmadiyya with our books open on the phone. So it's not about just, you know, we have to just worry about African Americans. We're here to bring everybody into Islam to Ahmadiyya. But the goal is the globalization of Islam to Ahmadiyya. That's our goal. You know, but in my opinion, and maybe some will disagree with me, you got to get rid of that term black because it keeps us divided.
Well, what term would you like to use?
Right?
What time would you like to use? What term? The term.
Oh, the term is Ahmadiyya, African American. That's who I am. I'm Ahmadiyya, African American.
Brother Rafiq.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So you said you had a message for the youth. Do you want to unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah. Sure. So I'd like to just offer another perspective on what my brother just shared, because I think this is these watershed moments where you have these type of violences perpetrated against people because they are black and they're black skinned and they're black and it's just the truth. They're black and they're not considered as anything other than black, and that's what's causing these situations. And so I don't think that that perspective should not be brought into the conversation so that we can start to find a remedy how to, offset this whole thing that Black Americans get pulled over routinely and are killed by police officers. It's just that way. And in most cases, they're white. So that's something we got to really just address. We have to say, okay, it's not something we just don't address. It's real. I'm scared to death. Yeah, I'm an Ahmadi. Yeah, I'm an African-American Ahmadi, but I'm black and I'm driving. And if the cops pull me over, I get nervous. I make certain things because I don't want to get killed on something innocent. We've seen guys in their cars with their children, guys selling videos. They're screaming, I can't breathe, why? And you keep going because the individual is black. So you go back and you understand that the Prophet, of course, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, there's not a black over superior of a white or red. So we know that breakdown is there. He himself identified it. The Quran itself also says, I've made you tribes and sub-tribes. So we know that there's this breakdown. It's not that we focus on that, but the reality in the terms of that situation and what we are being presented with as is disproportionate. We get jailed more. Why? It's just because we're Black. It's not because of anything else. And that's just the way I see it personally. But I don't, you know, not agree with my dear brother that we ourselves view ourselves. I do as an African American. You want to ask a question? You got your hand on your chin.
I would like to give a little, for me, especially coming from a Muslim's perspective, there is, starting first, there's a history of slavery all over the world. It used to be a big part of just like how economies run. It still is, but it's become less apparent and it's more hidden. The slavery in America was so bad, it has completely changed the way the word slavery is used. Mm. We even say now the Jews weren't slaves because we found they had burial rights and property. Mm-hmm. Can you believe that?
Sure.
Because of how poorly African Americans were treated, you can't even call other people slaves anymore because they set the bar so low. There's no bar. And then Islam gives instructions on how to overcome slavery afterwards, right? You know, we're going to feed your slave as yourself, just like you do. You're going to clothe him, right? And you're going to give him his manumission, his right to earn his freedom. And whenever he does, right, and he has those skills, right, you send him off in a good and becoming manner. And this is how you raise a people, right, to have knowledge and wisdom and be able to survive and act appropriately in their own communities. But we didn't do that. We were the worst, some of the worst slave keepers in history. And then when it was over, we said, good luck, to go out there and be somebody. There was supposed to be reparations, which were significant, and they weren't acted upon, and are still due. So where do we go from here?
I'll tell you.
But where would
I'll tell you where we go from here. Okay, because what happened was, you know, if you go back again to when Mufti Sahib came, and the conditions were kind of similar. There was racial unrest, there was Jim Crow, all this stuff was going on. But what the Jamaat presented was equality. But not the Jamaat just didn't present it as a theory. They actually lived it. They actually, like his brother was saying, they embraced everybody. It wasn't like, you know, section off like it's, you know, frankly become. And so until we can create that sense of, you know, real true brotherhood that the Jamaat has across the world, we see it. We see that we know we all brothers right here tonight. We all got love for each other. I got number love for all my brothers. And my brothers know that. But the reality is, peace. But the reality is, you know, we do have the answer. But we as he termed my dear brother as African American Ahmadis, we too have to take a bit of a better position as far as being a voice, and really being a voice that, you know, gives the proper guidance to not just, you know, youth of African American, but youth across America. That starts with these type of, you know, programs where we can share and discuss and tear it down and break it down and see what we can do as a community. Because
what do you say to a group of young men and women that are angry and rightfully angry, and tell them how to take that energy and properly route it and use it? Like, what is the proper route for that energy? We can't just tell them, come here and like, oh, well, you know, just pray it out. Like, there has to be an action that comes with it. It can't
when we study Holy Quran, Holy Quran, and that was one of the beauties of Ramadan during this pandemic. We had an opportunity to read 30 parts of the Holy Quran, which was actually the whole of the Holy Quran. You read about the trials and the tribulations that the former prophets went through, you know, and how Almighty Allah guided them. And they went through way worse than what people are going through now, way worse. Jesus, peace be upon him, with way worse. Prophet Noah, Prophet Lot, they went through their trials with Prophet Abraham, you know, his people. You know, his people were idol worshipers. But the thing I'm saying is, you know, the trials we think we're in, we just don't have that total dependence on prayer and being steadfast and patient and you know, giving ourselves and even in donating our finance. In fact, I'm behind in that. We're not there yet. But the thing of it is, we can't, as Muslims, and especially Ahmadiyya Muslims, it's not about the blame game. This person's wrong, or that person's to blame for us being here, or that section of humanity owes us some money because of what they did to us. Allah's gonna deal with them. And that, in my opinion, this should be our mindset. You know, it's not what we have to do to them. What we have to do is practice Islam. You know, and we're totally dependent on our prayer and heavily involved in sacrifice. This is what the former Ahmadis, in fact, the early Ahmadis in the 30s, 40s, that's what they went through. And they stayed in here. You know, when you talk to the old Ahmadis, the Ali Rizals, the Muzaffar Ahmad Zafars, the past, I mean, these are brothers that I've met, you know, and actually, while we were going through what they were going through, they actually became more creative in their survival because of the fact that they accepted Islam through Ahmadiyya, you know, through their prayer, through their sacrifice. Allah gave them more. Now, are we at that point in our practice, in our dedication, in our prayers to Almighty Allah? That's the question. It's not about how bad America is. America is what it is because they're so far away from Almighty Allah, and you know the Wali is not there for some of them, you know. And so in studying Holy Quran, which we should do, in fact, that's one thing, and I'm not complaining about Darsa Quran. Darsa Quran is good, but we were taught earlier that during Ramadan, we read we read a part a day. And that's what basically we've been trying to do all my life, you know, and, you know, we can reflect on that, you know, and go back and go through commentary and so forth, but it's about Holy Quran and practice, sacrifice, and steadfast in prayer. I mean, this, in my opinion, and I'll stop.
Brother Rafiq, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. So, you know, I think that, okay, the Jamaat has been here for 100 years, okay? And say, look at the condition of, say, us as African-American Ahmadis within the Jamaat. And those are some sections of us that are still hanging in there. If you look at the early history of the Jamaat, it was primarily African-Americans that were pushing things forward. It's always those people that are the ones, just like in Noah's time, Islam, where you say these are the meanest of people. And so when the people come to these, when like a person like Muhammad Fasadi comes and he starts preaching, he goes to these people specifically because they know what the condition is. So, you know, even though I believe the answer it lies in what they did in the early stages of our journey here. I think that we need to be more actively involved in creating what we call afiyat here, a place of security. It's like, it's unsafe. You know, how can we attract them to say, you know, there's two sides to life. There is the secular side, and then there's the spiritual side. We have to be practical about how secularly we approach it. We use our spirituality without question, but it takes development over time to do this. You don't just, we can't just give a person a book or a pamphlet and say, voila, and you're done. It takes interaction with that person. How many of us actually engage a person on a regular basis? This is part of the whole concept of tabligh. It's not just give them a pamphlet or something, but to actually engage them in a way that they become connected to you. This is what he said earlier. He said the sense of brotherhood was phenomenal. In this sense of brotherhood, do you really care about me? People going through a lot. So historically, this is what we've done, because 40 acres and a mule was promised by the government. It didn't happen. So that was part of us, you know, lifting us up by the bootstraps. So we go into Tulsa, we go into Roseville, we go into these places, we try to establish ourselves, they get burned down. So historically, it's just been madness for our community. Yes, we do, Ahmadi Muslims have the solution, but are we willing to do as the Caliph has been telling us for the last 3 years? Are you willing to go into battle, serious? I'm not talking about physical. This is now, remember in the beginning, I talked about a spiritual revolution. Okay, Uncle Manir called it the real revolution. So it's a spiritual revolution. So this, and taking that in the context, what we really have to do is create environments that become attractive to people, that they will think, okay, all outside of this is chaos. Inside of this, governed by our leadership, our Khalifa, and how it extends out throughout the world, that we do have the safe place. Are we saying it ourselves enough, loud enough, bold enough? And in a way, now, I'm not just going to say pray, you know, because James said faith without work is a dead faith, and our prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said tie the leg of the camel. So you got to do something. I'm just a solution-oriented person as well. So I don't just think that, you know, you're just going to pop up and do this. First thing we got to do is, and especially Qadam, to me, is you got to get some energy. You know, they say I'm vigilant. Okay, that's what they say in Urdu. You know, I got energy. We were told to get energy. Where you get energy? Get up and make that tahajjud regularly, and go down deep. Go in that sense of anguish. You'll find and get to work hard and fast. It says it in the Quran. I'll give you that strength. Get up and do that. The Khalifa said to us in 2000, the last 5 years ago, 2014, and I was in UK Jalsa. And he said, if we pray right, so he said there's something defective in our prayer collectively. He didn't say individually some of us are not doing, we do. He said collectively, if we pray right, we can make a significant change. So I say first thing we do, we got to get down and pray. We really got to pray. We got to engage the community. You can't sit back and wait for the community to come to you. You got to get out there. I've been engaged in the community. I'm sure Brother Omar and the rest of them over here is on the line. You engage them. You go out to the churches. You go out to the community meetings. You go out, you meet people. You engage them. They say, who are you? I'm Brother Rafiq. I'm from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. That identifies me. I'll tell you what else. Wear one of these. Put it on your head. Grow a beard. Look, the fourth Khalifa said, look, there's a purpose in wearing one of these. See, you hear me keep referring to the Khalifa, what they said. He said, put one of these on. A question was asked, why should you wear one? He said, number one, it protects you. Because if you got it on and you living it right, you ain't going in the bar, the party, to this, you ain't doing all that with no cap on your head. Okay? So he said, identify who you are. Plus, when people see your goodness and they wonder why, they say he's a Muslim. But then what will happen if you really get in the crunch with them, do foot soldier work, they're going to say, what kind of Muslim are you? Haven't met one like you. I heard it over and over. I'm sure other brothers have. You got to be confident. You got to be confident. This, I'm giving you solutions now. I'm telling you how we going to get them. All right? I'm not just a complainer. I'm talking about how we going to get it done. All right? You got to be confident, man. Allah got us. We are followers of an institution of spiritual lineage. Okay, lineage. You go from all the way from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his Rashideen, all the way through to the Messiah alayhi salam and his Khalifas. You're in that line of protection, if you believe that. You gotta trust. You gotta trust. You gotta trust. You gotta trust that Allah is with you. Okay, we're under divine protection. You're under umbrella. Be brave, like the warriors that went on the line, fought hard. The young brother that put his hand up in front of the prophet's face and got his arm shot off. I mean, we living good. We in America driving cars, living in Kansas, and, you know, watching TV, eating ice cream. And people right now, and I'll tell you, and I'll close with this. The persecution against Black people are real. In parallel to what goes on to Ahmadis across the world. Persecuted only for what? I'm Ahmadi. I get shot in the head and killed, family, all that. We had Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all these places where our people get killed, persecuted. This is almost terrorism against us as a people. We have the solutions. We have the answers. Don't forget, wear your beard. Assalamu alaikum.
You know, I'm glad you said that. One thing that really stuck out to me is you said we got to make the right environment. And a big part of community is creating like a friendly, welcoming environment that keeps people attached. What kind of environment do you think we need to make for the African American youth to make this a safe place for them? Because right now, like I mean, just watching these videos, I'm sickened, I'm grossed out, and you know, this last one, the person just kept saying, I'm scared. So how do we create a place that's safe?
The first thing you got to do, as far as I'm concerned, is, you know, a good friend of mine's here in Philadelphia passed down, and while he gave us a suggestion. He said, because he has this huge mega church and he has an amazing athletic program. And the first thing you do when you get something based in athleticism, where most people feel like they can do something, as simple as a basketball court, create a little league, get with the mothers, get with the fathers. People will come out and support their kid all the time. Do something simple as that. Create maybe a little food pantry. Create, you know, somewhere where people is trying to get a job, maybe can get a suit of clothes. Create little centers where, you know, you can maybe get a health screening. Something like we have plenty of doctors. Maybe we can do something which creates something that makes people, this is a service we're providing for you. Bring your after school programs, things of that nature that want to address the issues, help people get, make connections and partnerships with employers so that people get jobs, you know, create a space where your mosque, one, is open. No 9 to 5, I mean open, with being staffed by somebody that's there that if a person did come up and want to ask a question or know more about Islam, somebody's there. Most of our doors are closed. I'm just being frank, okay? To keep it like, if we really going to get down and do what we're going to do, like we say we're going to do, you see the unrest in America. It's sad. It's terrible. It is heartbreaking on a lot of levels. I'm not just saying because it's a black thing or a white thing.
No, it's for all of us. For all of us. We're upset too, man. We're upset.
And it's nuts. And we sitting here living it. And so guess what? We like a doctor with medication and we not giving it to the patient. All right? Just because the Ahmadiyya answer, he's right. The answers are within Islam and Ahmadiyya. Ahmadiyya is the progressive side of what Islam started 1,400 years ago. Okay, we're the modern version. We're running. We have MKA. Think about this, guys. All right. When MKA started, it was our fourth Khalifa. I had a dish this big on my side of my house. We had to direct it and aim it and try to, you know, get the signal. Tahir Abdullah came to my house and he was the man. And we got it done. Now I popped my phone on. I put it on my big screen TV the other day when I would look at the Khalifa sermon. I just went from YouTube to big screen TV to Khalifa right there in my living room. Wow. That's the advance. When I was in London, UK Johnson, it's like CNN, MSNBC. We just introduced 8 stations now. This is amazing that this is happening, okay? This is the kind of stuff that I'm saying that you're a part of. Even my first Johnson was at Long Island University. That's where I was at, Long Island University. I slept on the back of poison ivy. It was the worst thing I made it through. And Dr. Irfan, he helped me out. He was just a kid from New York, him and his brother.
Could you tell me, there's a name that you've been mentioning a couple of times, Brother Munir Hamid. I'm not familiar. Could you explain who this brother is?
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
Munir Hamid was somebody that I knew personally, and I know that Omar did. But I'll just give a brief introduction to what he was to me, and I'll let Omar run it because I'm sure he's got a lot more history. Uncle Munir Ahmad, to me, was my first teacher here in Philadelphia. He gave me my foundation as far as Ahmadiyya. He's the one that told me, he said, you must read. You have to read the books 3 times. He gave me specific books to read. He took me in like I was his child. He bought my wife her first set of garb, and I didn't have no money, I had no job. He took me back and forth to New York, and he showed me things. He showed me the Arab section. He showed me where to get a spinach pie. He was so interested in me. I was just blown away that this man was so interested in me. And that's who he was. And he was the president here in Philadelphia for many, many years. He became Al-Amir before he passed away. But he was a giant. He would speak in speeches. He'd break down and cry. Just amazing man. His wife is still here in Philadelphia with us. She's still doing amazing work. But yeah, he was very, 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 very special to me. Omar?
Yeah, with regard to Munir, Munir was like a brother, a teacher, somebody you would contact if you needed some spiritual advice. You know, he was a prolific reader, studied Promised Messiah writings. Just the people around, a lot of love and respect for Munir. I used to call him every week, even when he was not well. And I'd ask Munir, I said, Munir, I need some spiritual food. You know, and he would just give me some spiritual knowledge to just keep you going. You know, and that's how I remember Munir. But it's great loss to the Jamaat, USA Jamaat, as was Muzaffar Ahmad Zafar. And but you know, getting back to what we were talking about before, I think with regards to prayer, with regards, you know, even our level of sacrifice, you know, is it where it should be in being an Ahmadi Muslim, in representing Hazur and representing the Promised Messiah and representing Almighty Allah? You know, do we, and even in the midst of all the trials and everything that's going around us, you know, is an Ahmadi, even with what we witnessed a few days ago of a man being murdered, you know, as an Ahmadi, and especially being part of this community, we can't get up and start going against other people because of what they involve in their hatred. We're Ahmadi Muslims. Our slogan is love for all, hatred for none. That's enemy included, you know, so we're going to experience a lot more trials, you know, than this. And in fact, we probably experience more, if you want to use black, we probably experience more black on black crime than we do what we saw here a few days ago with the brother that got choked to death. And there's a lot of that. And now it's happening among the youth, you know, in our community. So here in Pittsburgh, often you hear a 19-year-old shot a 16-year-old in the head, so forth. But the one thing that we have to stop doing, and especially of these, it's not about blaming other people and what other people owe. Nobody owes us anything. Our allegiance is to Almighty Allah, and that dependence and that sacrifice and that love and that prayer. You know, this is how Allah becomes our wali. You know, we can't choose what level of sacrifice that we think is best for us. You know, we have to just go out, give it up, and keep giving it up. You know, and we'll feel those blessings. We'll receive those blessings. When Mom was sick, I took care of Mom. My father died in '78, okay? And one of the things I promised my mother, Mom always had a bad heart. She had an irregular heartbeat. One of the things I never told a lot of people, Mom only had one eye. She didn't have both her eyes. She only had one eye, and that left one was 20/20. The other one, through cataract surgery and becoming infected, she lost the sight in that right eye. So in writing Azur every month, in doing her duties in the Jamaat Nesbalaj now, she was doing it with one eye, all right? And my job was to keep her as comfortable as I could, you know, with the patients. And it wasn't always easy. But one of the things I asked Allah was, I asked him and I prayed to him and I said, Allah, when mom leaves here, can she just go to sleep? You know, and that's how she left here. She just went to sleep on me on the 26th of January, 2018. So I witnessed that prayer. You know, I witnessed mom being able to do her, and she didn't even finish high school. You know, so in her being able to accomplish what she accomplished, me being her son, in her prayers and her sincere prayers, and even my father used to dig graves before they had a backhoe, and he had arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. Hands would swell up, but he went out there and made that sacrifice, you know, just to keep mom and myself going. So I think when we start talking about what we're witnessing, it's bad here because we're living in a material society, but they're not comfortable either, you know? So the thing I'm saying, we have to elevate our duties and our actions and our prayers. And even in the midst of everything that we're going through, we have to elevate, keep going up with our sacrifice and our love for Allah, finances, and everything else. All right, and this is how it works. This is how it worked for the prophets, and the prophets of old. And that's about where I'm at with what this conversation is. And I'm really enjoying it, and I'm so happy to have been a part of it. And I feel like, and I think about what I do every day. I'm trying to represent my mother and father every day of my life, the rest of my life, and asking everybody to keep me in their prayers.
Sure. So I'd like to add to what my brother said. And again, I'm not here to disagree. I'm just here to offer another perspective, a humble perspective. But, you know, we sometimes, you know, and like I said, I try to be solution oriented. So I'm thinking, I'm in my mind and thinking, you know, what again could be shared so that, you know, it inspires people to act and not just to listen. And so if you just think about what the Khalifa said today, he gave us 4, you know, or 3 stories about the Khalifas and what they, you know, had required people to do. And it was just without question, they act blindly, and that's the result you're getting. So that's the first thing we have to do as far as being that's doing this the solution. But just to jump back a little bit on the whole black on black crime, because we hear that a lot. There's an environment that is created. That's the environment that is created. That if you got poor schools, poor housing, if you got miseducation, unemployment, if you put in chemicals, you put in drugs, you put in alcohols, you put in you guns, you create violence, you create a mindset. It's the environments that create the mindset. If you grow up in a suburban area and you're not exposed to this kind of stuff, you're not likely to engage in this kind of stuff. So yes, the likelihood of us to hurt and kill each other is more likely because of our environment. I just wanted to add that point.
And parenting.
What I'm saying that's my reality. That's what I've lived. I don't know if you've ever been locked up. I've been locked up. I don't know if you've ever been cursed out by the police for no reason whatsoever. I have. It's these experiences, these personal ones that cause me to, you know, do self-reflection. But I'm not a criminal. I worked for a judge for 18 years, and I still work in the court system today. But the reality is there is a clear disparity, and we do have the answers. And I said earlier, if you look at some of the things that need to be done as far as attracting people to where we're at, you're not going to just get them to go out and we preach alone. We got to create an environment that says, come over here. Our mosque in Philly is huge, and we can do a lot of different things over there. I mean, they're planning to put a basketball court up, from what I understand. Can't wait for that thing to get up, so that, you know, this is going to be good for the neighborhood, not just for us, but we're going to create some kind of environment where a summer program coming and, you know, hey, come on in, we're going to have a summer camp afterwards. We'll sit you down, you know, maybe give you a little something like Brother Usman did over there, and they did out there in the Midwest. They had a fantastic program. We got successful models over in Zion and places like that where they've done stuff. We need to look at all those little successful things and then say, how can we incorporate them and make them bigger? We have to now become bold as those early pioneers did. I'm talking the early ones. They came and kicked the door down, boom, and they went right at them and said, listen, this is who we are. I got a green turban. I'm here with a message of truth, a message of equality, but for equality, spiritual equality, economic equality, all these equals that the Black people at that time were suffering from. They said, man, I'm going over there. That group, that guy over there with the green turban on, man, he showed me love. He showed me, he showed me how to get $1, you know what I mean? He didn't just say, give us a piece of bread. He gave me a baked bread, you know what I mean? He taught me how to fish. This is what we have to do. How do you bring a man up? And if the word get out that, hey, we got programs where you bring your child over to us and they get calm because they in a program that we are administering. Brother Usman said some of the people that got involved with that basketball program, they were begging, for this thing to happen again. So these are the type of things I think that we can create that get that sense of, okay, that Black on Black crime's over there. Over here is Afia. This is security. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
I agree with both of you, and I find myself in the middle of, not that you guys are at other ends, but like I see the merits of like both points in the sense that on one end, the answer, whenever we're asked, could we do more, whether it's pray more, read more, sacrifice more, the answer is always we could do more. And any good that we get is surely the result of prayers. But at the same time, Prophet ﷺ, he taught, Iyaka na'budu, Iyaka nasta'in, and that we put forth our efforts and then we ask for help. We're not putting Allah to test and being like, fix this for me, Allah, and not take any steps ourselves. And in my own personal opinion, God will bless any step that we take towards Him, but He blesses the right steps even more as a way to kind of direct the way to Him or to victory. Brother Omar, I want to ask you, I heard you have an amazing story about the 1965 Jalsa Salana USA in Cleveland. Could you share with us, please?
Well, we were in Cleveland, and it was announced that Cleveland to Masih had passed while we were there. And I'm hoping I'm, get the year right, but it was at Jalsa, it was at the Masonic Temple in Cleveland, Ohio. And when we found out that he had passed, and it was just a very, very sad moment at that particular time. But I also want to say that the one thing we have to realize is the Ahmadiyya community, this is Allah's community. This is the only community that actually he supports. I mean, he's not against everybody else. But as far as the community itself, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, all right, it can't be broken down. I mean, there's going to be ways for it to improve and so forth, but we have to realize that everything around us, all right, we're going to witness all kind of different things. We're going to witness, like I said, we're going to witness crime amongst our own. We're going to witness drugs, but this is how I'd say the non-Muslim, this is how they operate because they have no guidance. They have no spiritual guidance that they can really depend on and love and make sacrifice towards. So they invent all different things. The drugs, the this, the beating of women, the shooting people in the head, and just like the guy that killed the Floyd man, this man wanted him dead. He sat there, had his knee on that brother's neck, and had his hand in his pocket, looking at the people that was complaining about it. Like, what are you gonna do about it? This man is dead. But at the same time, what is our attitude about this as a Muslim? What did we learn from that? We learned that here's a man that's totally misguided, and he's gonna be punished for what he did. But I don't even think he even realized that there's a punishment associated with what he did. So is our attitude to not talk to these people? They're our enemy, and our slogan, love for all, hatred for none. How far does that go? You know,
No,
and I think
they're the ones you need to talk to the most.
Pardon?
Unfortunately, they're the ones you need to talk to the most.
Sure. But I mean, give them the message. You know, once they hear that message and it hits their conscience, then the law takes over. You know, but to not give them the message and just sit back and watch the wrongdoing and the this and the that kind of behavior, are we guilty of doing something that we were supposed to do, of not doing something that we were supposed to do because of that person's skin color or nationality or ethnicity? You know?
No.
And then when you look at our children,
We have openly stood against injustice, even when it's not popular. That we've never been that way where we just say something because it's politically correct. And so, no, I agree with you. I don't know what that statement is, and I don't know what those actions are. But that's why we're talking about it right here, because we as Ahmadi need to know what the right actions are and what the right response is, you know, not with just our actions, but also like emotionally and personally.
But I think also I wanted to say one other thing too is it's very important that we study Holy Quran and study commentary. Critical. Because, and I tell a lot of non-Muslims, you know, in order for you to understand, you know, the Bible, and especially the mistakes and how it doesn't even how it misrepresents Husband Isa, peace be upon him, have to study Holy Quran just to get the answers. You can't get it no other way without studying Holy Quran.
I would add that you would also need to read the books. You got to read the Prophet Sahib's books, and you got to read all, you know, read as much as you can of the Khalifas. Everything's right there online.
True.
Read as much as you can. But I wanted to share a little short story with you because I don't want people to get the impression that I'm on this black thing, you know. Sometimes people think I'm on this black thing, you know, and it's like I've been through all that, you know what I mean? I went to the Million Man March, you know, I was in the Nation of Islam. I love my people, and I have no problem saying that I am a Black American. But the reality is, when you become a Muslim, and especially an Ahmadi Muslim, you become something really special. And I try to use that specialness wherever I am. So I had a blood drive. There was one of the brothers years ago had a blood drive at a church, a Mennonite church up in one of the counties. And the brother wasn't getting a very good response from the people. He said that the preacher was a hard neck. And then went up, and of course, it was an all-white church in a suburban area. But I went in there with the energy, the spirit of, I don't care what's going on in here. I'm here now. And I'm here to bring goodness, love for all, hatred for none. So as I got there and we started this whole thing, nobody was accepting the T-shirts and any of those things. By the time I started saying, hey, free this, free that, the people were coming in and out. The same preacher that was giving us such a hard time, his wife and his daughter came out and they wanted a T-shirt and a cup, his wife and daughter. But the point I'm making is that, yes, we do got a specialness to it. It takes development. How comfortable are you as a Qadam, you know, or let's listen to this, or even as a Jamaat member, that you feel comfortable weaving in and out of, you know, groups? I know Jews, good people, I know them. I knew rabbis, I know Christian leadership, I know community activists, I know as many, because Allah said the Prophet was sent as a mercy for mankind. So I get your point. I understand that, yes, we are an extension of that. We are a reflection of that. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be developing in that regard. The best garden of growth is to go into the Ahmadiyya garden. There's lots of gardens out there. Even God says there are many ways to me. But we believe that the best garden, the best where you can grow the most is right within our garden. So now how do we attract people to come into the garden? Because the garden's beautiful. Maybe they don't see the beauty in the garden because we ain't there to show them. So I think that we have to become more of a presence. And not just a presence in the mosque, but like I said earlier, actively involve yourself with other people's efforts and sit in the room with them and say, hey, this is who I am. And this is a mosque I go to. We got love for all, hatred for none. You know, you can throw that theme out there, and then it's lots of things you can put out there. But the reality is we have to become more actively engaged. Our Khalifa has been asking us to do this, to become more actively engaged. And I'll tell you this in closing. We did our centennial, right? And the Khalifa said, and this is what he wrote in his letter. I read the letter. I read the letter at our program. At the end of the letter, he said, and this is where race matters. He said, I want you to go get the people I see in these pictures. That was that's a quote. I want you to go get those people. Those people are Black people. And so we shouldn't shy away from that. That's the charge. He said, go get them. I want them. He knew, like Noah's people, these are the meanest of them. But these are the same ones that our fourth Khalifa said that when I see them, the light of God shines on their face. That's what he says in his book, The Detroit Message. Read it. Khalifa himself, the fourth Khalifa said, when I see these people, he was talking about Black people. He said, you see God in their face. But he also said this. He told us to stop acting like we was inferior to anybody. And then he told the rest of y'all, he said, stop acting like you superior to anybody. He said, ain't nobody. This is an even playing field here. And that's what we bring to the table, even playing field. But is that what we really project? That's what we got to keep it real at and say, okay, are you like the Khalifa? The Khalifa attract people all over the world. Are you like that? And if you're not, then what is it that you can do to develop that? First, as those things I was saying, you go into the prayer, you listen to the Khalifa, you listen to his sermons, you read the books, you develop it. Last thing, in the book, the Noah's Ark, he says this. In the Detroit Message, he says in the beginning, you have to have a natural inclination for the poor. I'm quoting stuff from the book. You have to have a natural inclination for the poor. How do you get that? That's a decision that you got to make. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Brother Rafiq. Jazakallah to the panelists for taking the time out, and Jazakallah especially to Yusuf. I think Alhamdulillah, you did a fantastic job in directing the conversation. And for myself, I feel inspired in many ways. I think that, Alhamdulillah, we have some time left, and we want to make good to our promise to everybody to keep some time for questions at the end for our esteemed panelists and our esteemed moderator. So we'll go ahead and get started with the questions then, and we can spend about 20 minutes on questions before wrapping up for the day. I'll just make a quick announcement in regards to asking questions. So you can ask questions in twofold manner. You can either send your questions in via the chat box, and I'll read them out loud, or you can take them via the raised hand option. And to see that option, you'll click participants, and you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen a blue hand. And you can click that, and you can verbally, then you'll come to the top of our list, and we'll unmute you, and you can verbally ask your question as well. Either way is fine. But before we get there, I believe Mohtamim Saab Sayyid Usmani had a couple announcements, as the Mohtamim Saab is the organizer of the program. So I think Mohtamim Saab, if you have any questions beforehand, and then we can go to the question answers.
Assalamu alaikum, Mohtamim Saab, our esteemed panelists. We really enjoyed the program. Yesterday, I had the honor to speak to both of you guys, and you both shared some inspiring stories and some anecdotes of some personal experiences with Khilafat. And I know Uncle Omar has met 3 Khalifas personally, and then Rafiq Saab shared his story of when he went to UK Jalsa in 2003. So I was wondering if I could ask you guys to share like an inspiring personal story with our beloved Hazur. Jazakallah.
Go ahead, buddy.
Before you go ahead, I'll just request to the panelists, Jazakallah, we're really looking forward to this answer. I've been looking forward to this question the entire session. But I'll just request that both panelists keep it to 2 to 3 minutes, just so we have time for the questions. A lot of questions coming in via the chat box, just to try to get after those.
Got it. Got the camera on. Go ahead, Omar. You want to say?
Oh, okay. I tell you, probably the most exciting experience I had with Khalifa Masih al-Khamis is when we were told that he was coming to Pittsburgh. And we had to prepare the mosque, which was in all kind of crazy shape, painting, lights on wall. We all worked together. We got the painting done. We got everything set up. Security arrangement was set up. He was able to go out to the cemetery where our members who had passed, there was, I think, 22 of them at the same time at our cemetery out in Glenwood. And that was really exciting. And then to have the family Mullikat with him, with the whole family. That was And then able to, of course, I've been to London too. And I'll stop right there.
Okay,
But,
you done?
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just saying when he came to Pittsburgh, that was in preparation for him to come and have that whole scenario just to go real smooth. It was alhamdulillah. It was through the blessings of Allah.
It's a quick point I want to bring up, and Uncle, I'd like to hear the other story as well. But I remember I came to a fall rally in Pittsburgh. I believe it was either 2010 or 2008. Before there was any announcement or anyone had any ideas who would be visiting Pittsburgh. And I remember that's the first time I met you. And I spent a week at that much. And I remember every day you would show up in the morning and leave at night. And I was kind of curious, like, how is this guy showing up every day and working at the mosque nonstop? And I remember you told me that I'm preparing for the day Hazur comes and visits this mosque. And I remember in 2012 when Hazur would visit, that was a thought that kind of radiated with me, that the days come and this guy put in the labor, and alhamdulillah he's seen the fruits of that. And please, if you could share whatever incident you were about to share as well. And then I know Rafiq Uncle's incident is also very inspiring.
Well, I'll let Rafiq go ahead because I know he has something I don't want to forget.
Just a little short story that I'll tell about one of my experiences, and I appreciate that, dear brother. As I said, I had one earlier, when I met the Khalifa the first time, but one experience that I had was Hadith Tomati was brand new, and we were there, and it was all this mud, and it was bad, but we had a malakat. My wife and I had a malakat, a personal malakat with Hazur. And I remember first seeing all the Arab people that were standing in front of us, behind us waiting. They were so excited. And that's the first time I had seen that, like, wow, look, all these Arab people, that are here. So that was quite remarkable to witness. That was the first influx of them. But then when my wife and I went in the room, my wife and I having a discussion, he's asking, it's just me and my wife, and my wife says to him, can I take her to Paris? So I said, so he looked at her and looked at me, and it's like, so he starts explaining to us that Paris is a nice place, and we got a mosque there, and we're building something there, and so forth and so on. And then he ultimately, he rubbed his beard a couple of times, and he says, yeah. He says, sounds like take her, like that. So at that point, I stood up straight and said, Hazur, as if to say, listen, I don't really got the money to be taking them out of Paris, right? But Hazur kind of read that, and he said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. So he ultimately sent me and my wife on a day trip to Paris. We got to eat lunch at the Eiffel Tower. We were escorted around in beautiful cars. We stayed in the third Khalifa's wife's bed in the room up there at the Paris Mosque. It was just an amazing, amazing experience. From the time we left until the time we got back, we were treated like royalty. And we were like stars of the whole place. Everybody wanted to know who we were and how we got that. But it was really just my wife asking, and that's how humble a person he is. Thank you. Omar, I think they wanted you to tell all your story.
There's so many to tell. I went to London in 2016, and I met Khalifa Masih Al-Khamis, and we stayed at the Jamia School. And I think it was at the time when they just purchased it, and I think there was they had, I think there was like dead animals in the swimming pool and at the soccer field. It wasn't set up right. But anyway, I remember just the hospitality that we received at that particular point. And what really got to me is Hazur came up to visit us. And when he came in, he says, well, Omar Shaheed, how was your stay here? And I was just shocked over the fact that he knew my name, and I was just so excited about that, and I think this year we had last year, brother went to, had a Mullikat doctor here. And so when he came back, the doctor came back, he handed me a candy bar. And he said Hazur told him to give that candy bar to me. And I was like, it was like, I'm blown away. I'm like, you know, I have to really make more sacrifices. I'm not doing enough to be an Ahmadi when I received that. So this is the you know, when you get these kind of experiences, especially from a man of God, and you know, this is a man of Almighty Allah who he's guiding, you know, that there's no enemy that can penetrate this and close this down, and that relationship is permanent. And we're witnessing that, and we're a part of this community. We're about building up the community, you know, and as far as all the materialism and everything else around us, it's still about the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and our sacrifice and everything we have to do to grow this community.
Jazakallah, Omar Saab. You know, that's an amazing story, and both stories were, alhamdulillah, very inspiring in their own right. So I think now we'll just come to the questions that have been raised. A lot of questions are coming in, so I hope that we can get to as many as possible. And to anybody's question that we don't get to, I humbly apologize for that. So we'll start with the questions coming in via raised hand. I see Tar Tariq Bhai is raising his hand. Tar Bhai, I'm going to unmute you. You can ask your question. Tar Bhai, go ahead. Tar Bhai, go ahead and ask your question.
Muted.
You're on mute, Tar Bhai.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, there's a little bit of an echo going on because I have it on the big TV and I'm over here. I'm trying to get away from the echo. I just wanted to thank Brother Rafiq and Brother Omar for this session. I think this is very, very much needed, especially the timing of this session regarding especially what's going on in America right now is very, very, very relevant. I especially want to thank Brother Rafiq. I've known Brother Rafiq for a really long time. He's always shown me the most, he's always embraced me ever since I remember when I was like a young atfal. He would always show me the most amount of love anytime I saw him. Always encouraged me to continue with what I was doing. I remember even when he asked me when I had rededicated as a Waqf Naw. He maybe doesn't even remember the story, but he had when he had heard that I had recommitted, he just started to embrace me again. And I remember him telling me at that time that you know, what I was doing was a very important thing and to not give it up. And I remember distinctly about Brother Rafiq's. He's always been that type of person that when you meet him, you know, you feel like that, you know, when he's talking about creating this environment, that's a brother who creates that environment wherever you go. So I feel like my experiences with him are a testament to that. But my question, and this is for both panelists, I guess, is that what would you say? And I've read the Detroit address today, and I will say that any brother who hasn't read that should read it. But as far as like this inclination for the poor and going out there and embracing those members of society, especially in America, who are outside of the suburbs, where I would say that most Pakistani Ahmadis live. And I feel like from a personal perspective, we don't do much tabligh in these areas. Most of our tabligh is done in suburban areas. And I feel that a lot of times it's from a sense of fear that maybe just because of you're going out and speaking to people who don't look like you, or because of just a fear of the other, or it's a fear of general safety. But what would you say to those brothers who have that fear in them, or who may feel uncomfortable going into those areas? Because I know that's a real thing.
I'd say find a friend and let somebody take you there that's already comfortable. Somebody that's already had that experience. Get with somebody that's already, you know, knows the terrain. And if you're trying to familiarize yourself with a specific environment, it could be like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, African-American. I remember we were charged with going to the small towns. Hazur told us to go to the small towns, and he told us to preach there. And we found the people there to be very, very receptive. But again, they were white people with, you know, I'm black, you know, but I had to find my comfort zone. I always find my comfort zone in the knowledge that I'm here to serve mankind, just like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So in order for us to say, you know, be that attractiveness, and you want to attract people to you, you got to go to where the people are. And I know sometimes there's a language issue with some brothers, not many. I'm talking about born Ahmadis, brothers like yourself. You know the diction, you know the terrain. It's just like this. You got to kind of go inside yourself and say, you know what, I am under divine protection. I need to have this experience. I need to understand it. I need to go in there and just listen to somebody other than myself and hear what they have to say about this particular issue. I have a solution. You might pull that person to the side or that group aside and raise your hand. I've done it many times. You're in these environments and you're not going to be the guy that, wants to burn something down or do any of that nonsense. You're going to say, hey, I have this other dynamic. This is what we do. This is who we are. But then once you give yourself and put yourself in that position, then you got to get the support from the Jamaat itself. So you have to have a space, physical space, that people can now meet you. Say, hey, meet me at the mosque. We got a program. Coffee, cake, and chew Islam is just one of them. But something outside of this normal thing. And just say, listen, come on, have a slice of pizza with me, man. And, let's talk about your life and see what's going on with you. Get interpersonal with people. And I think that's, do small bits, just little things. If it's your job and you don't used to interacting with people that you don't know, interact with that person. You don't have to necessarily go into the hood hardcore first, but at least, start to feel comfortable just talking to somebody else other than your family and friends and members of the Jamaat. I think that's where we got this closed kind of circle, and it's not the comfortability, not the confidence to say, I got something to offer, and it's of value, and I need you to hear me, and do it with diplomacy and tact and grace, because this is what we've been trained or developed to do. And if we do that, then it's going to be a slam dunk. Assalamu alaikum. Hope that answers some part of your question.
Okay.
Good to
our
see
mosque
you.
Our mosque is, I think the word we're going to use, it's in the hood. It's in a poor community. And right across the street from mosque, we have a big park. So we've witnessed people overdosing on drugs. People have been shot, and a lot of things that we witness. One of the things I've done, there's homeless people. We've given out, in fact, I gave, lady came past, she comes past here, I gave her mom's shoes. Mom had some brand new sneakers. So she had about 3 pair of them. It was brand new, gave them to her. The police department here, they came and they put a camera on the mosque that covers that whole park and the area around it, so, and they did that on a volunteer basis. Wasn't no cost or anything like that involved. But one of the things we have to realize too, that if people can hear you, all right, they listen. Even if you go into anybody's community, everybody doesn't want to attack you when you go into a poor community. Only time I won't say the only time, if they feel like you're threatening their livelihood or their business, then they'll say something to you. All right, but you can go anywhere. And even with regards to, people are afraid now because they keep seeing these scenarios of what happened in Minneapolis. But, it can happen anywhere. All right, but with regards to us as being Ahmadis or being Muslim, it can happen to us. Are we afraid to, death could come upon, we're afraid to get shot? It may happen anywhere, on the road, anywhere it can happen. But with regard to Tabligh and our level of wanting to get some kind of truth out to humanity, that's what our job is. So we go in there first with prayers to Almighty Allah, and get back to Azur. Azur is our example. He came into America, went up on Capitol Hill, and he had the respect of everybody on Capitol Hill, and even the people there had the enemies, in the so-called intelligent people wait for him to say something that they can attack him on. Never happened, because he was under the protection of Allah. So we look at where he goes and what he's able to do, and our prayers in his prayers, there shouldn't be anywhere that we can't go, anywhere. When you look at Cleet Timothy Robbie, may Allah praise, peace be upon him. He went into Chicago, okay, and I wasn't there on security, and I think he went for a walk, and he didn't have a security with him because he was trying to show the brothers that this place wasn't bad at all. He went, I think, 10 or 12 blocks by himself on Wabash, all right, without the security, told the security to stay still. He'll be back. And when he came back, he had people who he had made friends with when he came back. So that level of fear among the righteous, and him being the example, I'm not saying I don't have it, but what I'm saying is just, we're given examples of things that we could possibly accomplish in our community, and it's just a blessing to witness what we're witnessing, and we're given the truth with regards to what the prophets, peace be upon them, went through in the past and how they accomplished what they accomplished. So that's all. I'm finished.
Jazakallah, Omar Sahib. That's an amazing incident that you relate as well, and one that I haven't heard, but alhamdulillah, amazing. So we'll keep moving through the question and try to get to as many as possible. Next, we'll come to the question from Ibrahim Ijaz Sahib. Ibrahim Sahib, I'm going to unmute you and you can ask your question. Ibrahim Sahib, go ahead and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you both so much for this incredible session. I feel like I'm at Ijtima even though I'm just sitting at home. And it's really a blessing to hear these incredible stories. And I think something that doesn't get said often enough is hearing in our own language, in our own kind of American language, these incredible pieces of advice and guidance. Language is that kind of a thing, and so it's really nice to be able to hear in the same phrases and things that I talk to my friends that I learned in school that you guys are giving us these pieces of advice. My question is basically that in American culture, there's this notion of, there's these three things we don't talk about: money, religion, and politics. And I think that especially in this day and age with politics being extremely divisive, and topics of religion, most people are either, atheist, or even if they follow a religious practice, they do so out of, tradition, or they do it in more of a liberal fashion where they're not trying to get into the weeds. They're more so trying to just, practice as much as they can. And I have a lot of Muslim friends, for example, who, as long as you fast and as long as you're praying as much as you can and you follow these, Muslim Instagram accounts, you're doing the most. And, let's not go further than that. So I'm just, seeking some humble advice from either of you or both of you. How do we cross that barrier of not coming off as preaching, even though we want to be preaching, especially because, I've had experiences where friends have literally said, "Are you preaching to me?" And then that's it. That's kind of the end of that conversation, end of that friendship, or, it puts that weird strain. So Jazakallah for your answers.
So I'd like to try to answer some part of that. Jazakallah for asking the question. It's a very good question. But trying to say, expose people to say what the realities of life is, as opposed to saying this is religion. So generally I'll start off with, just talking about the natural courses of life. Asking people to contemplate, just having a general conversation, say, boy, it's really hot out here today. We ever wondered, the sun is 93 million miles away and it just stays there. It's quite amazing, isn't it? And they say, yeah, it is. They say, oh, you ever thought about what does that? And then we got a moon that's subservient to us, and it just stays there. Did you know that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and we've traveled 66,000 miles? Absolutely extraordinary. Wouldn't you believe? Where do you think that comes from? And then kind of open the dialogue up from there. See where the God consciousness is, because some people's light is very dim. Now, the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was so hurt by the people not receiving the message that he was going through a death. And Allah said, no, pump the brakes, he says. He said, surely do not grieve yourself to death after them. But he did give him an instruction. He charged him, he said, convey the message. So it's the message doesn't have to be, it starts off with, the Quran says, the oneness of Allah. You know, find the common grounds. I have Christian friends. Sometimes I say to them, I say, did you know that hallelujah and alhamdulillah mean the same thing? If you're having a conversation, you're trying to tie the commonalities. You know, talk about Ibrahim and Isaac and the brotherhood, how they buried their father. You know, learn a little bit so that you can be able to navigate, not just for religion, but from a practical place, you know, explaining why you have peace of mind. You know, this is the one that really gets them, and I got to close with this quickly. It says that, you know, the importance of building a relationship. And once I say this to people, I say, how important you think the relationship is that you have? Because they say, oh, God. I say, how important is relationship? Do you know how to build a relationship? You communicate, you go back and forth. I say, me as a Muslim, part of my traditions, humbly, I say, part of it, we talk to God 5 times a day, morning, noon, and night. I say, now, just imagine if you and I talk to each other 3 times a day. I'm talking to another person. Do you think we get closer? See, these are some of the pearls of Islam that you don't have to say Islam, but you just say Islam. So that's what I'd offer up. Talking off the question.
Well, were you finished?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. So like, there's several ways to, in my opinion, to get people to open up to you. You can do it through some type of service that you give them. One of the things I've been blessed, I do a lot of electrical work, appliance work, heating, air conditioning, and so forth. So for the elderly, I do a lot of free work for them. And also have a Facebook page that's covered with statements from Hazor, statements from the promised Messiah, peace be upon him. And so the people who know me, they know I'm Muslim, you know. I also, without, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. I go to, a lot of my non-Muslim friends pass, I'm usually at the funeral service. And this is sort of different. And when I'm in there, people know, they know I'm Muslim, you know, they know that the funeral service is going to be about Jesus and so forth. But the fact that I came, you know, and I didn't, you know, not show up because I'm Muslim, that's a different way of giving a message. With regards to the youth, our focus should always be that how are we preparing the next generation of Ahmadis? You know, whether we're doing tabligh, you know, to another person, whether we're going to school, how do we, is it important to, you know, our relationships with people without even, you know, mentioning Islam. You know, they already know you're Muslim, you know, because you're not going to church, you know, you're not focused, you don't have the Bible in your hand and so forth. They know that. But it's our practice that's very important, because in calling ourselves a Muslim, people can see things that we're doing that's going to say, Muslims don't do that. Well, that's not the practice of a Muslim, and so forth. So practice, open-mindedness, first of all, prayer, service to humanity. If you have any public meetings, we invite them in. We don't know what the reaction is going to be. One of the things, we haven't had a lot of public meetings here at the mosque for, it's been a while. When our missionary Adnan Ahmed was here, I mean, we had interfaith meetings sometimes twice a year. And we allowed religious leaders to come in and expound on their beliefs. But that friendliness that we gave them, they're bringing their members to our mosque. They're curious as to see how they're going to be accepted. You know, we had refreshments afterwards and so forth. We were able to get invited to their church or their synagogue and so forth for their programs. So there's a lot of different ways of how we open ourselves up to humanity, but example is critical, prayer is critical, and keep in mind that we're focusing on, especially the youth, how am I preparing myself to create the next generation of Ahmadis? I'm going to college, I'm getting these degrees, I know I'm going to make, you know, high paying money, I know we're going to get married, house, all right, how are we going to raise our children for that next generation to represent Islam through Ahmadiyya. And this is all about, this is about converting all of humanity to Islam through Ahmadiyya. Now, we've just started the second 100 years. We started in February, all right, during this pandemic, you know, and we may not be here, like I know I won't be here for another 100 years, but this is what we have to have on our minds. What are we doing with our lives? How are our parents preparing us? And if there aren't any parents, and we know that as being Ahmadi Muslim, is there any way that we can create a relationship with that orphan or with that child that doesn't have any parents to possibly get them to want to be around us? You know, we're going to volunteer our time to spend with that. And there's a lot of them out here, a lot of children that are homeless, you know, that we can make contact with. We've had girl fights here in Wilkinsburg, and the first thing they do, they come to the mosque. If I'm here, they want to come in, either get away from the fight or want to use the girls' room and clean up and so forth. So we have a connection, all right? And but they know that one thing that they do, though, we're a friendly group, we're open-minded, we're not condemning anybody, and so forth. But with regards to the young brothers, the Quran brothers, we're praying that you have the mindset to realize that you're here and we're preparing, you're developing yourself, and you're preparing the next generation of Ahmadis. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah.
In your actions.
Jazakallah, Umar Sahib. And you know, we've come up on the time, and I want to try to keep good to our time constraints. But in the end, I think one question that alhamdulillah, I feel very fortunate to have heard these inspiring stories from both Umar Sahib and Rafiq Sahib, and myself, I feel inspired in many ways. But I think one last thing that we can close it out with is, you know, our brother Yusuf Bhai also has some amazing stories with his experiences with Khilafat. And so if I can just request Yusuf Bhai in the last 2 minutes to relay a particularly inspiring story or experience he has had with Khilafat to all the brothers, I think that would be extremely useful. So Yusuf Bhai, if that's okay, maybe you can relay something.
You know, I agree. I think it was a brother Rafiq. He said, he's like, who am I? I resonate with that feeling whenever I meet a Khalifa, or they, you know, Khalifa's like known who I am, because I never really had that expectation. You know, he's the leader of tens of millions of people all around the world. And I've had the pleasure of traveling to some of those around the world, and I promise you that it's the same love for Khilafat and for prophethood. And these amazing stories, they go to every culture around the globe. And these stories about Khilafat are also the same. You know, we've talked a lot about our differences today and how we come back together. I'll tell you, Khilafat is one of those things that brings us together like that. No matter what the food, color, right? Our Khalifa is one. And these amazing stories, they everywhere from Fiji, Africa. I went to Egypt one time, and these guys, they did their Friday prayer a little bit different. After they finished Friday prayer, they'd have the Jalasiam immediately. And that's where they all sit down together and have a meeting. And all they would do is go up there and tell stories of Revelation. And it would be, well, brother, I was driving, Revelation that comes, it feels like it's burning in my ear. It says Messiah's come. Or I have met this Khalifa in my dream before I met him. I'll tell you, I had one girl. She came and rented a basement in our house. My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, they have a house in Peace Village. The lady comes up. She was probably maybe 28. She was Persian, grew up in Canada. Looks at the picture, hanging behind on the wall, and she points to Hazur and says, I've seen this man in my dream. This is normal. You know, I met another guy, right? He was an Arab. I don't want to say he was from Saudi. Maybe he was from the Levantine. He says, I was in doubt, right? He says, I saw the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and then I saw a little version, and I saw the Promised Messiah ﷺ looking very similar to him. And he's giving me the message, right? The Messiah Mahdi has come. So these stories are ubiquitous. And it's something that brings us together, and we can share. Whether we're Swedish, Canadian, American, this love of Khilafat is spectacular, it's phenomenal, it's unexplainable, and it definitely comes from God Almighty.
No question. No question.
Jazakallah, Yusuf Bhai, for those. You know, there are a few words that could have wrapped it up better than that. Alhamdulillah, I think we're going away inspired. In the end, I'll just make one quick announcement. Jazakallah to the panelists, especially. I think, alhamdulillah, your time, you know, for us, it was a treasure that you gave to us in the word you spoke. So Jazakallah for taking the time out to do that. Amazingly inspiring. I'll just make the announcement that inshallah, the program will continue tomorrow and Sunday. And so tomorrow's session will inshallah start again at 8 p.m. and it will be moderated by Brother Abdul Hay Thomas. And our panelists will be respected Brother Michael Banks and respected Brother Kaleem Griffin. So it's my humble request to please attend those sessions as well, where you can get a different perspective on these amazing stories that our beloved brothers have to share with us. And then a final reminder is that on Sunday, we will inshallah have the closing address delivered at 3 p.m. Eastern by missionary in charge Azad Hanif Saab, in which he will speak about similar sentiments as well. So with that, I think we can close for today. I apologize for anyone's question who we couldn't get to. Inshallah, we'll try on our side to be better about that. And that's my humble apology to everyone. But Jazakallah everyone for joining, and Assalamu alaikum. I'll see everybody tomorrow, inshallah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.